to the Pockets of Knowledge podcast. I'm Desiree Stanley, and with me today is Michelle Bailey. Welcome to the show, Michelle.
Thanks, Des. It's so great to be here.
And Michelle and I have known each other for many years. I don't necessarily need to say the exact number of years, but it's a lot of years. And so to those who know her, she goes by Miko, and we've just been the best of friends for a really long time. And so I'm so excited to have you on the show. I have enjoyed watching you create the mixed media art that you're doing on Instagram, and now you've got an Etsy store, and I love it. It's just so fascinating to me to see as you're creating it, and the end product as well. And so I love it. And that's why I wanted to have you on the show. But the art was kind of out of necessity in a way. And so that's something that we're going to talk about right now is what was the reason that you began creating that art?
So backing up to 2015, I had been tinkering with different types of journaling and, just as an outlet, just as a way to worship or to, just kind of play in journaling. I know you've journaled. And I've never had the attention span really to kind of sit down and diary, for lack of a better word. And so it just kind of evolved into this more of an art therapy and art journaling, mixed media. I was doing all the pretty little ephemera and the cutouts, and everything was just and I never felt comfortable in that. I always felt like I was trying to do what everybody else was doing. And so it just kind of evolved. You said the word, kind of out of a necessity. It was a way for me to start memory keeping.
Okay. And so tell us about that. What does that mean?
Yeah. So to 2017, I was a missionary, and I was on my 4th mission, and I contracted E. coli. And I became very, very sick, and returned to the States and went through significant testing and was treated for the E. coli and, went about my day. But the anxiety was bad, true anxiety, uncontrolled. My thyroid levels were out of sync because I have had thyroid disease since I was 16, but this was different. This was like a brain fog that started to take over. I actually went to see a shrink. I thought I was going crazy. I thought, my God, at that time I was 45. I was like, there's no way. Early onset dementia at 45. Is this real? I don't have a history. My family doesn't have a history. And so they told me to start documenting, how I was feeling, go through my symptoms. And what I ended up doing was memory keeping so that I could remember, because I was forgetting. And I was afraid that I was going to forget who I was or what I had just done the day before.
Yeah, and that's very scary.
Yes, extremely scary. I remember sitting, it was actually a small little gathering at a local restaurant, and my friend was here from out of town, and we were sitting on the roof of this bar, and she said, "You don't look like yourself, like you don't act like yourself." And I actually told her, I feel like I have dementia.
Oh, wow.
And I want to, she was like the first person that I had told this. And I said, I want you to know who I am before I lose my mind.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how bad I was.
So you went through some testing to determine if it was actually early onset dementia, or, what were you doing after that?
Okay. So after I had the E. coli, so that was June of 2017. Okay. I was extremely sick, and I saw a primary care doctor. I was then referred to a therapist because they told me I was crazy, basically.
That's not helpful.
No, stick a pill in your mouth. Let's give her Xanax for when she's anxious. let's give her a little Prozac when she's feeling down. And soon I was taking all these drugs. And if you've ever taken all of those things all together, you can't remember anything because of the drugs. So so I went to see a therapist, and he started prescribing me antipsychotics. Said, I don't think you have dementia, but let's take this. Let's see how you do on this. And everything I took made me so sick, so sick. Because we weren't getting to the root. We weren't getting to what was really causing me all of these side effects. Why was I experiencing brain fog? Why were my thyroid TSH levels only, which is actually not a thyroid hormone, it's a pituitary hormone. So when you go to the doctor, that's all they test you for. They test you for your TSH. So my TSH was always normal. It was always in the normal limit. And then I ended up going and seeing a specialist for my thyroid and asked to be tested for, something else. And she said, oh, we don't need to test you for that. We know you have that. And I was like, okay, so what is that? Right. And I had seen on Facebook a friend of a friend had been posting about this functional medicine doctor in the Charleston, Murrells Inlet area where I'm from, South Carolina. And I reached out to her and I said, I've had thyroid disease since I was 16. This is what's going on with me. And she was an RN. So, I felt like I could confide in her and she would know. And she said, you have to go see Dr. Salibi. You have to go see him. A lot of the symptoms that you're describing to me, they all sound like they could be related to your thyroid. So I went and saw him, and he ran a plethora of testing. And
good.
It was detected that I was still, well, let me back up a little bit. Now, I did reach out to this nurse friend, and I kind of stored it. I kind of stored it all away. And I said, I'm going to go, but it's not covered by insurance. And functional medicine can be extremely expensive. And so I'm not sure when that was. I think that was in the fall time of 2018. So I had been suffering for a year and about 3 months with, this memory impairment. And I used to run, jog, do 5Ks, and I was in the best shape of my life to gaining 60 pounds in like 14 months. So not only was I not remembering, I was gaining an excessive amount of weight. I was sleeping all the time. I had zero energy. Thank God for my husband, who was so patient during all this. Chris, he's so level-headed anyways, but he was really concerned for me. Very.
Of course.
And he said, we've got to find a solution. And we talked about the functional medicine doctor. And, we knew that it was going to be an expense. Well, that December of 2018, I was actually in Charleston with some friends at a concert, and I had what's called a thyroid storm. And basically, it feels like you're having a heart attack. And wow. I didn't know that it was a thyroid storm at that point. I thought it was food poisoning. We were in the middle of the concert, and I had to excuse myself into the lobby. And it's like the cold, hot sweats and the vomiting. And my friend was like, we need to get you to the hospital. And I was like, no, I want to go back to Florence. I want to go home. I want to go home. I was a little irrational. Like, I should have gone to the hospital in Charleston.
Yeah.
Charleston from my house is about 2 hours. It took us almost 4.
Wow.
I had to stop. Just excessively throwing up and sick. And I walked in the door at 1:30, and Chris immediately packed me in the car, and we went straight to the ER. And when I got to the hospital, my heart rate was almost 200. My blood pressure was stroke level. And it was discovered after they did the troponin levels for the heart, that my heart was fine. It was not my heart. And it was discovered that I had what's called a thyroid storm. And basically your thyroid I'm not a medical professional, but basically a thyroid storm is when your thyroid kind of goes haywire. And for those of you that don't know, your thyroid controls everything in your body. And so when your thyroid isn't functioning properly or it's over functioning, it can create this whole storm of systems. And so I was admitted immediately to the hospital, went through all kinds of cardiac testing just to be sure, and stayed about 3 days in the hospital. And as soon as I got checked out, Chris said, "You're going to see that functional medicine doctor." They literally ran, I mean, thousands of dollars worth of tests. I mean, thank God for insurance. I think my total medical bill was somewhere up in $300,000 for all the stress tests and everything up running. So I ended up going to see a functional medicine doctor who ran all the tests that I had started to tell you about. And it was discovered that I still, in fact, had E. coli
Oh, wow.
a year and a half later, which created SIBO, which is small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. And all of, we all know, even before you didn't know, everything's in your gut. It was why I was gaining so much weight. It was why the brain fog was there. And then it was discovered that I have Hashimoto's, which the fact. So with Hashimoto's comes all of those things too. Usually digestive issues, loss of hair, fatigue, memory impairment. That's not really memory impairment. It's more like a brain fog, which can seem like you're losing your mind.
Yeah.
And so it was also discovered then that not only that I had the SIBO, but for many years, Chris and I had struggled with fertility. And it was discovered that I have polycystic ovarian syndrome. And that this doctor feels that was the reason why I was never able to have children after Austin, who is our son.
Wow.
Yeah. So it was, I mean, I know that's a lot of information, but it's just so important to listen to your body and to know when something is not right. And all the doctors and therapists and people that I went to see, they only wanted to put a Band-Aid on it. They were not willing to get the root cause of anything until I found the right doctor.
Yeah. And it sounds like you kind of had to be your own advocate, right? And sort of push for these things to actually, come about for your own health, right?
Yeah. And most of that is, I'm sure is insurance driven. I mean, if you don't check off box ABC, you're not going to have DEF, etc. Things like SIBO and how to treat the body before it becomes an issue.
Right. Right.
So.
It's more like after you're having these problems, let's do this. And as you said before, like take this pill, or take this pill. And, that really doesn't get to the root cause of the problem. So you're not really solving anything.
Correct. So once I had the proper medication protocol for my thyroid, which was something a little bit off of the mainstream, most doctors prescribe levothyroxine or Synthroid, which are synthetics. I went the route of more of an Armour thyroid, which is it's pig intestines. I mean, it's more natural and less chemical. I'm not on that anymore, but that was now I'm more on a compound of T3, T4 because my TSH, which is the level that most doctors test, pretty much stays normal. But if you don't look at, your TPO, which is your autoimmune markers, which mine were in the hundreds, and they're supposed to be 37 or below. And I had like 300-400 TPOs. And so it was nice to meet somebody that kind of takes you as an individual and can help you holistically. I did a lot of vitamins and nutrition, and so that I could discharge all those Xanaxes and that was so horrible for you.
Yeah. Yeah. Was it difficult for you kind of having to step into that role of being, you're kind of your own crusader, if you will, for this, your health?
Yeah, I mean, I think my personality. I'm pretty assertive when it comes to things. However, when it came to this, I felt very defeated. I
Mm,
felt like I didn't know the right questions to ask. I mean, I had for so long, you're told to trust the physicians. They go to school, and we learn about Hashimoto's in school, but we don't really learn about the different biomarkers and how to treat it. We just say take this.
yeah.
So
And so Hashimoto's, oh,
yeah,
sorry,
no,
go
no,
ahead.
yeah, no, I had to become an advocate for sure once I knew what I was doing.
Yeah. And so Hashimoto's is an autoimmune disease. Is that correct?
It is. It's an autoimmune disease of the thyroid.
Okay, I see. What was it specifically that they were able to use to determine that that's actually what you had?
So well, there's a whole bunch of testing that they do. The big marker is called TPO, and that is the level in your blood that they test to see if you fall into the guidelines of having Hashimoto's. But I mean, they look at the whole picture, the
Sure.
brain fog, the weight gain, the hair loss, the et cetera, et cetera. So it's kind of a big picture, but it's an actual blood test.
Okay. Yeah,
No,
and those things,
no physician had ever run it before.
gotcha. And I was going to say that sometimes those things could be caused by other issues
Mm-hmm.
entirely, right? Weight gain or hair loss
Sure,
can be caused by a number of other things. And so
sure.
it could be really hard to pinpoint what the true problem is
Mm-hmm.
that's going on.
Yeah, the therapist told me I was depressed and that I was gaining weight because I was depressed. And sure, I was absolutely depressed, but I wasn't eating anymore. Of course, I wasn't running or jogging or whatever you want to call what I used to do. I wasn't doing that anymore, but yeah, it wasn't the same.
Was there any other diagnoses that were discovered or kind of found when you were going through this process besides Hashimoto's?
Yeah, so you asked this and I'm going to answer it specifically. I was
Okay.
tested if I carry the gene for Alzheimer's, and
Mm,
I do not. I have a less than 1% chance of contracting Alzheimer's disease.
okay.
And that is, there are people who question those studies and that testing. But for now, I'm going to believe that I am falling into that 1% of people who have this marker. It's a marker. My doctor told me that it wasn't dementia. It definitely wasn't Alzheimer's. So
Huh.
even though I come from a long line of cardiac unhealthy people, I also have a lower risk of contracting heart disease
Mm,
because of, again, these biomarkers. Do I have to watch what I eat? Absolutely. Does that mean that, that I could have a heart attack? Absolutely. It just means that I am less likely to get heart disease because of the genes that are in my body. So I am insulin resistant. There's so much research on that too, which does affect your insulin. And I do have to be careful about diabetes because of that, because of the insulin resistance. I also was told that because of the insulin resistance, that could be why I was gaining some weight
okay.
because of the higher blood sugar. The blood sugars were always normal, but the insulin levels were high,
Gotcha.
which you don't think about that, right? I mean, we think we're told to check our blood sugars.
Hmm.
Average person doesn't have a way to check their insulin.
No.
So, and then I was told because of my history of cancer that I was estrogen dominant. which they could not figure out why I was estrogen dominant because I had had a full hysterectomy. But the body is it's very interesting. So
Oh, yeah.
insulin resistance can also mess up your hormones. And so
Mhm.
I was struggling with hormonal insufficiencies because of the complete hysterectomy several years ago. So we started, working on that too. Yeah, I found out a lot of it was hard. It was like you want answers, but did I want all that news? Right. I came in here because I had a thyroid storm, but there was a reason that I was feeling anxious and up in the middle of the night and having Chris drive me around the neighborhood so that I didn't feel like I was losing my mind, or, you know, there were things that were causing it. And
Yeah.
I have to watch those kinds of things.
Wow. And so now, how is your health? How are you healing?
Well, my thyroid is amazing. I think I mentioned briefly that my functional medicine doctor, who I see primarily, I do have a primary local to me should something come up, but as far as my thyroid goes, it's perfect. I take the compound T3, T4, and my thyroid is good.
Excellent.
Yeah.
And so the Hashimoto's also is kind of under control.
Yeah, it's under control. My levels are the lowest they've ever been. They're in the 80s right now. You want to be under 37 is the marker that they shoot for. So I still have to watch that my thyroid doesn't get into the hyper zone, because when that does, that's when the anxiety comes. So Hashimoto, from a non-medical person, is every day is different.
Mhm.
So, but I have learned how to manage it with the direction of my doctor. He says, if you're feeling this way this day, you may have too much thyroid, back off. If you feel this way and you feel like you need more, call me. Like, he never wants me to take more, but I can take a day and not take any thyroid medicine. So,
Sure.
yeah.
All of these things kind of happening was, what led you into doing a lot of the art
Mhm.
and the things that the journaling that you were doing because you were concerned about the brain fog and memory loss, but it
Mhm.
evolved from that.
Good.
And then
Absolutely.
it really, really exploded.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
we can see your office behind you and all of your art supplies and some of the different art that you've done.
And they're all this way. Everything is in front of me. Yes, it's my happy place for sure. But yeah,
And so how
evolve.
did that grow? Yeah.
It's become, I like to look at it as an intuitive experience now, where I can enjoy it. I still do memory keep, just not as religiously. I memory keep my trips, and special things that happen, but I'm not keeping like a daily log anymore. But yeah, I consider myself an artist now. I do art.
Yeah.
Who knew? I'm 51 years old and I am an artist.
I
You can
love
say,
it.
you can
Yeah.
call yourself an artist even if you're not.
Absolutely. Absolutely. If you are making art, you are an artist. It's
Right.
like people who say, well, if you're not winning, marathons or half marathons or whatever, you're not really a runner. Well, I'm sorry. If you're out there and you're running, you are a runner.
Right. And I actually had an artist, like, I know that this is silly, a real artist, like somebody with 500,000 followers, or I don't know how many, that she had a private conversation with me one day after a post that I made, I don't know, maybe 2 years ago. And it was exactly this. I was like, I feel like I might be an artist. And she actually messaged me and she said, you know what, Miko, you are an artist. Like, accept that and feel good about that. So I do now. I feel like I'm an artist.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And you're one of the things I really love about what you're doing is that it's so free form And, you know, I think a lot of times we feel like in order for art to be art, it has to be a certain way or has to look a certain way. And that's not really true. Art can be whatever, right? And so what you're doing, what you're creating is just as it comes to you. And that's what I love about it. It doesn't have to be perfect,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah. As a recovering perfectionist, which I am self-proclaimed, which I've had 2 therapists now tell me, it is so freeing to not worry about splashing paint or, colors on a paper, because, you can throw that away, right? Like,
Yeah.
just because I create this piece and I think it's horrible, somebody may love it.
Mhm.
And, but the hardest part for me was sharing my art. Now I love to share. So,
Yeah. Well, no, I could see how that would be difficult initially, right? When you're creating something, it's very personal.
right.
And we are kind of always afraid to put something new out there. We don't know what kind of response we're going to get from people. And so I could see how that would be, you'd be hesitant to
Hmm.
do that. And, but it's so great that you do now because we all get to enjoy it
Right.
and appreciate it.
Well,
So
thanks.
since you've been posting on Instagram, have you kind of met new people who also are doing the kind of art, like mixed media art that you're
Ab-
doing?
Absolutely. I still have my core group of original journalers from like 2015, people that I've traveled to retreats with. Um, but absolutely, there's one thing about the art community as a whole is they're all pretty supportive. As long as you don't steal their work or recreate something that they do without giving them credit, they are very, very supportive. So, and
That's awesome.
I'm all over the place, right? Like, I have this desire to be a homesteader. Who knows why? I just do. So I had a girlfriend, an artist friend, say, why don't you create a separate page for all your homesteading things? It takes away from your art things. And I'm thinking, well, I'm a well-rounded person then, right? I, who wants to keep up with more than one Instagram account? Not me. So, I figure that people can get to know me as a person, and then the art is just a bonus.
Yeah. And
So,
so talking about homesteading, recently or not so recently, you guys have been looking for something
mhm.
to, move the chickens that you guys have started raising,
Yep.
and you want to add some additional animals to your farm. So tell us a little bit about that.
So we currently are living in what's considered a downtown area in a historic district, and in a southern town, and there are a lot of ordinances.
Mhm.
And you're only, because of the size of our lot and where we're located, we're only allowed to have 6 chickens. We can't have any livestock. We could have 1 goat, but you've been here. You have 1 goat in the back of our yard, we'd have no vehicles, or they'd be out in the main road.
Yeah.
So yeah, God, this housing market is like nothing, well, nothing like any of us have ever seen, especially in a small town like this. Gone are the days of finding a beautiful home for 200,000. I mean, they're just gone. The homes and the land where it was 2,500 an acre is now 10,000 an acre,
Wow.
and that's land. That's not a home on the land, on the land. And we have made 3 different offers, and we have been outbid on every single piece of land.
Wow.
And we're offering asking. So, but yeah, my husband, who's born and raised in South Carolina, he says, I never thought I'd see the day where in little old Florence, South Carolina, you would be bidding on a home, first of all, being turned down for a home, and having to pay almost $500,000.
Yeah,
But here,
the market has been pretty crazy all around.
Mhm.
And, as many of us in different parts of this country are seeing just absolute craziness. You want to pursue this dream,
Yep.
and it's like at every turn, it sort of seems like it's not happening.
Right. But I feel like there's a plan in place. I may not know that plan, but there is a plan. I've had some recent health issues, non-thyroid related. And so I feel like maybe I'm supposed to stay here. I'm supposed to stay in this home that's paid for, right?
Nice.
I mean, for the first time in my life, I'm debt free. We both own our vehicles and we don't have a house payment. Who
That's
are we?
excellent.
So although it's frustrating and we would really love to, the right house has to come along and the timing has to be right for us. So, and like I said, because of the recent health issues in the past, 7, 8 months, there's a reason.
Can you share with us some books that you have read or podcasts that you've listened to or anything that's sort of been inspiring to you or made a
Mhm.
difference in your life?
Sure. So, for the Hashimoto's, I really like the podcast Unbound Healing.
Okay.
Anne Marie and Michelle, they really talk about autoimmune protocol and how to eat for your autoimmune disease. Michelle, they both have Instagram on Unbound Healing. They're just nice girls. Like they will help you if you need help. I have followed their autoimmune protocol and seen results. I also listen to the Doctor's Pharmacy. It's
Okay.
Dr. Hyman. I don't know. I'm sure a lot of people have heard of Dr. Mark Hyman. He's also a functional medicine doctor. He talks about the Hashimoto's and everything else, and also the mast cell that I was just diagnosed. Um, the number one thing that has helped me most recently, because I listen to a lot of them about SIBO, and has been Beth O'Hara. She doesn't actually have a podcast, but she has a website and it's mastcell360.com. And she's a functional neuropath. And she talks a lot about how to histamine diets and keeping your histamines lower and food lists and just what to expect. So helpful for me.
Can you share also your Instagram page? So if anybody would like to go see Michelle's art on Instagram, and then also your Etsy store.
My Instagram handle is Mikosun. It's MIKOSUN. And then my Etsy store is MikosStudio, all one word.
I
So
love it.
just started kind of tinkering in the printable arena of what's called collage papers and stuff like that. People, they can print them off and use them in their journals.
Oh, that's awesome.
Mhm.
Super exciting. And I love that. And it sounds like you've just really created something positive out of something that was a really challenging, sad time in your
Mhm.
life.
Yeah.
And that's fantastic. Thank you
Yeah.
so much for being on the show and sharing your journey with us through your health and your art and all of that. And we so appreciate it. Thank you again
Guys.
for being on.
All right. So good to see you.
I know.